Hey everybody, it's Brad again with another Floriani Club video for you. This is part 2 of digitizing from a backdrop like a pro. So if you missed the first part, you should go back and watch it. I'll link to it in the description in case this is the first part that you run across. But basically, we have to put in a few details on these guys' faces and an outline, and then we're done. So I want to show you how I draw outlines. And then see, then we'll be done actually when I do the outline. But I am going to first fix something that we should have done in the first video, and that is if you look down on Jake the dog's face down here, see how there's not any stitches on top of his mouth? And then we look at Finn, and I didn't have you cut his mouth out when we did this, and we really don't want to have this many stitches layered onto one another. Luckily, we can edit his face without really having to mess anything up because there's no pathing involved with his face. It was just one color and then on to another color from there. We don't go from his face directly to his arms. I don't remember specifically why I did it that way, but I'm glad I did because it's going to make it easier for us to go back and edit this. So if you notice that you've made a mistake like this when you're digitizing something on your own, it's not that big a deal. We can just go back and change it. So what I'm going to do is I am going to select in my sequence view here, I'm going to select that element. Now this element is the only thing in its color group here, but if it wasn't, if like I needed to edit one of the arms or something like that, you hit the little plus sign next to the section and it'll open it up and all the individual pieces will be there. You can select which one you want. Like I said, there's only one in this. And before we can go and edit the shape that we have here, which is basically what we want to do, we want to edit this shape so that there's a hole in it. We have to change it from stitches. Right now it's a fill stitch. We want to change it from stitches back to artwork. And the way you accomplish that, down on the bottom here, you have something selected. Down on the bottom, all these different buttons down here will convert from whatever an object is to something else. And the very last one down here, it's like an orange star. If you hover your mouse over it, it says artwork. If you click on that, it will actually convert an element back into artwork. So if we look at our sequence view, we can see that this is artwork now. That means that we can add stuff to it or change it, or in our case, add a hole. And so what I want to do to add a hole in this, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So I'll just grab a magnifier and zoom right in on his face. I am going to use the line tool up here, and I'm just going to left click my way around his mouth, and I'm going to stick to the inside of the black line as I do this. I'm using the control key to curve my line, just holding it down while I click, and then I get to the end. I'm just going to go ahead and close my shape right here with the close shape tool, and now we've got a line that roughly matches the contours of his mouth. And that's what we wanted. It's okay that it's not totally perfect right here. If you're real anal about it, you can go to your shape tool here, the third one down, and adjust your points until they're exactly where you want them. But for a hole, we're going to overlap this hole anyway with both the outline stitch and some of these fills on the inside. So it's not critical that it's exactly perfect. But anyway, so what you do is you select your hole that you just drew, which it's selected. I can see it in my sequence view. And then I scroll up in my sequence view, I hold down my control key, and I select the artwork that I want to combine it with. Okay, so now I've got my my face shape is selected. If I scroll down, I can see that, oh, somehow I managed to not have this selected anymore. Hold down control and left click. Yeah, okay, they're both selected now. Not sure how I lost it there, but I did. That's fine. So we've got both of them selected, and what you're going to do is move your mouse somewhere into the design field, right click, and choose combine. So we hit combine, and that allows us to combine these two shapes into one. And look, it moves it up into sequence. It considered our face kind of the parent shape because it was earlier in the sequence. So it combined with that, and now our hole is gone from the bottom. It's just part of this shape. And now what we can do is, even though we drew this fill in originally with the complex fill stitch tool, what we're going to use down here is this convert to standard fill tool. It looks like a purple star. You just left click on it and it applies our stitches in there. If we needed to go back and adjust our start and stop points, using the convert to buttons down here, they are not going to ask you where your start and your stop points are or where you want your inclination to be. That's why we don't use those to digitize normally. unless you've got a special situation like you're trying to put a fill in an area with a hole in it. So what we're going to do is to go and look at our start and stop points and inclination, we hit this button right here, the shape tool. It now shows us our inclination line here, and it shows us our start and our stop points. Now, I don't particularly care where my start and stop points are for this particular design or for this particular element because it's the only element in its color group. So it's the only thing in this color change. So the start and stop point don't really matter that much. The inclination, though, we want to have that set to what we want it to be. Let's see, I don't remember how I had the inclination set originally or even why. So I'm gonna set it so that it's kind of parallel to the hat stitch direction, and go ahead and hit the select key here the select icon here to generate that. So there we go. We've got his face with a hole in it now, and because we've got that, we can go ahead and start doing the next element we're going to work on. Which what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this kind of dark red area in their mouths first. So both Finn and Jake have this same deal going on where they've got this kind of dark red for the inside of their mouth cavity. And I'm going to put that in first. So we're going to go back to our complex fill tool. Okay, so we grab our complex fill stitch tool, and I am going to trace kind of inside the stitch points for the where that like flesh color is, and then we're going to go around the tongue because the tongue's going to go on top of this. And I'm just tracing, making sure that these points touch. Now I'm going to go and not go inside the teeth. Okay, so that the teeth aren't going to be, and if you mess up, remember you can just backspace. But so the teeth aren't going to be overlapping too much with the inside of the mouth color. Okay, so there we go. We've got it. We're going to right click to generate this. Okay, now it wants a stitch direction. I'm going to actually set the stitch direction for this to be perpendicular to these stitches, just to give it some kind of differentiation. And then I'm going to right click. That's going to ask me where my start and my stop point are going to be. Now, the start and the stop point for this are not really going to matter because we can't really do any pathing from here down to Jake. So we're just going to kind of, put our start and our stop point wherever. It doesn't really matter that much. We'll just stick them both in the same spot. And of course, I forgot to select my color first. So we're going to go in and use the select key up here. It's going to select our most recently used thing. And it actually remembered the color that I was using last time. So, but that's not what we want. I'm going to use this, what is it? The one that I had picked to use is this amber red. I don't really have a dark red that's like that in this palette, and I'm just using the basic Brother Embroidery thread palette just so that I only have so many colors. So when we actually go to sew this out, I could find a nice dark red and use that. But in the meantime, I'm going to use this color for their mouths. So we've got that. Now we've got another area that's the exact same color, and there's no way to path to it. So we're just going to go ahead and start digitizing it down here. We're going to go back to our complex fill tool and basically do the same thing. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more here this time, and we're going to get this dark red area here traced. And again, I'm trying to keep, actually probably doing a little more than I need to, trying to keep so that I'm really close to my other stitches. And here we're going to go around the teeth again. There we go. We right click to generate. This stitch direction I think I'm going to do again perpendicular to the surrounding stitches. Right click. The start and the stop points really don't matter. Okay, and now we've got this stitch is now in place. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is the pink and the tongues, and I'm going to do Jake's first so that the machine doesn't have to travel all the way back here after it does the color change. So again, we're going to use the complex fill stitch tool again for this. I'm going to pick my color first this time. We get just pink is fine, and I'm going to draw this in, making sure I'm overlapping my outlines. Okay, right click to generate that, and we'll go ahead. And you know what, actually, now that I think about it, I think that the tongues would probably be better as a satin stitch, to be honest with you. So you know what I'm going to do? I'll just go ahead and let this generate. I think I'm going to do the tongue as a satin stitch instead. So we're going to go in, find our most recently used, the one that we just drew. We're going to left click on it and delete it. And we're going to start over this time using the satin stitch tool here, number 3. And we're just going to draw our shape in again. I'm allowed to change my mind. And you are too. If you draw something and you think that it's not right, do it over again. Okay? Right click, it's going to ask me for inclinations. Okay? And then our start and our stop point don't really matter, but I like to have them at opposite ends. Now, why would I rather have a satin stitch for a tongue than a fill stitch? Well, first of all, it's going to help differentiate it from the surrounding stitches, and it's going to reflect the light a little bit, kind of like how a wet thing would reflect light a little bit differently than a dry thing. And tongues are wet, have them reflect the light a little different. So we'll put it in 3D so you can kind of see how you can't really tell that much from the 3D view. Oh, and it forgot the color that I wanted it. We'll make that pink. That's better. But anyway, this is actually going to reflect the light much differently than this surrounding stitch does. So it gives it kind of a little bit of dimensionality that we don't have just by having fill stitches right next to one another. Okay, so we've got this in. Now we need to do Finn's tongue. So I'm going to zoom out a little, use my arrow keys to pan over to Finn, and we'll zoom back in. Once we get to him, I'm going to use the satin stitch tool, and we're going to draw our tongue in, again staying kind of right on top of the outline. Okay, right click, put in some inclinations, right click again, start and stop points, and that's it. So they've got tongues, they've got mouths, they don't have eyes or teeth, however, so we are going to do that next. So let's see, we'll put the 3D off, we'll zoom out a little bit. Let's see, since we're already over here, we're going to start on Finn's teeth, okay, and then we're not going to have any way to path down here to Jake. And we've got the same thing going on with his eyes. We really don't have a reasonable way to path. I could do from here to here, but I got some guff about the way that I traveled with the stitch showing over on this side. Let me put it on 3D here. Right here, remember this? Yeah, I had some people comment that they didn't think that was the smartest idea. We'll find out when I actually sew it out how that looks. When I sew it out, I'll post a link to like a JPEG of it, so you'll be able to see how that ended up. But anyway, we're not going to do that this time. So we're gonna have a cut jump stitch from here to here, either a trim or a jump that goes from there to there, and also back down to his teeth here. So a lot of times on detail work, there's nothing you can do. You got to have a jump stitch, but you want to avoid it if at all possible. I think I made my point last month on that. Okay, but what we can do though is not have any jump stitches between his teeth, and there's a couple ways we could do that. We could draw each one as an individual fill stitch and then have a traveling stitch between them. But I think that what we could get away with here is to just use a complex fill for this entire thing. We just go in and start drawing our shape and cut it across, maybe not quite that deep. Cut it across like that. And then what I'm going to do is go right up to where the outline is. And the outline will cover that up when I come around there with the outline. When we're done, we right click. I want the teeth to be perpendicular to the fill of the body, kind of like teeth. You know, you'd think the stitch direction would be going this way, at least I would. So we leave those like that. We're going to right click. It wants a start and a stop again. Not that important because we're not going to be able to path it. Of course, I forgot to set the color to white, so we're going to go down, grab our element, set our color to white. One of these days I'll remember to do that. And let's put it in 3D, take a look. Yeah, little chompers, pretty good. Okay, so we'll zoom out and go ahead and go back down to old Jake, and we're going to do his in this order. We're going to do left eye, teeth, right eye. So the machine's going to go down like this. And then after that, it's time for black, and black is going to be the really fun one for us to path and learn about doing outlines. So let's go ahead and get Jake's eyes done here. We are going to use the complex fill, and I'm going to draw in using the control key to curve it, the shapes for his eyes. And close my shape, put in the inclination. Now I'm going to have the eyes, let's see, I'm going to have them parallel to the fill surrounding them, like that. Okay, so that's parallel to this fill. But then this here, the stitch direction is going a different way, and it's going to be the same for the stitches that I put around his eyes. So they kind of will. I think it'll look good this way. Start and stop points are not that important here because again, we're not pathing with this white. But I'll have it start here and then stop here, so it has to travel the minimum amount of distance. Okay, now we're going to go down and do his teeth next. Okay. Like that. Right click, stitch direction perpendicular to the fill stitches around it. Right click, start and stop. We'll have it start here and stop here. Good habit to be in. Just jumps right down to there, jumps right back up to here. Okay, oops, I didn't mean to use that tool. I want to be on the complex fill tool. We'll go ahead and do his other eye now. I don't like that. I'm going to backspace. The curve got crazy. Always can just backspace if you mess up while you're drawing. Right there I let off the control key with that little corner, by the way. Otherwise it goes wonky. Okay, right click. Let's see, we're going to do the same stitch direction that I did before, so his eyes look the same. Right click, we'll have the start here and the stop. I guess it doesn't really matter that much. We've already got all these fills everywhere, so it doesn't really matter where we go next. So I could start the outline kind of wherever I want to start it. But since we're already right here, let's just start it right here. So the first thing, if we're going to start our next color right here, which is going to be our outline and everything that's black, what we can do is let's see if we can determine whether we could get away with having a satin stitch right here or not. And remember, we do that using the ruler tool. We're just going to click and drag from here to here, and it's telling us to use a run stitch on there. Yeah, so we could do, like, I was imagining doing this part as a satin, and look, it says to use a satin. Let's see where it tells us to, yeah. So what we could do is have a satin stitch kind of go and peter out down here and then take it into a run stitch, because I want this to be nice and wide and thick, this part of the outline of his eye. So let's go in and use our satin tool. We'll start drawing it like this. Oops. And then where it gets kind of narrow, like this. Okay, inclinations. We draw our stitch directions for our satin stitch in like this. Start and stop. I'm going to have it start here and stop here. And then, oh, of course, I forgot to set my color. It's going to be black. Alright, and then we're going to start with a run stitch and go from where our stop was and go down. And what you can do to make a run stitch bolder is have it run over itself a few times. So what I could do is go from the end of where the satin stitch was, go straight down. I need to be using the control key to curve this, and then come straight back up to kind of bold it. Oops. So that's 3 runs over that. So that should make that that should make that look okay. We'll find out when I sew it out. If it doesn't look good, I can just go back and change this one element. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go around his whole outline here. So anywhere we go, we're just going to go right around anywhere that we see the black. Now, this actually, we've got his nose here to do, so we just ran into it. We may as well go ahead and do it. So we'll stop this by right-clicking, and then we'll go in and use our satin tool. Oops. And we'll draw in, oops, I see what's going on. I used the classic satin instead of the satin tool. Alright. Anyway, we're going to draw in his nose here. Okay, nice. Stitch direction like this. Start here, stop here, of course, and then we just pick it right back up with our run tool, and we're back in business. Now, we want to go around all of his teeth, and if we have to go over ourselves twice, we totally can, it's fine. Or what we could do is go up like this, and then travel back around this way. And let's see, I started this down here, but we're gonna actually go and take a detour through this eye. To here. Okay, now that's a run stitch, and we want to start another satin stitch here. Stitch directions. Start here, stop here. Okay, throw it in 3D so we can take a look. Looks pretty cool. Alright, so then let's see, throw it in 3D so we can see where we stopped. We stopped right here, so we gotta travel from here down to here and then back around. So we're gonna get our run stitch tool, and we're gonna turn off 3D. We're gonna start here and just start clicking down this way and then back up and over. We've already done the eye. So now we've made it back to here, but now we're kind of in a conundrum, aren't we? How do we get out of this area? Well, for one thing, we didn't actually do this part of his mouth as we were coming around here. I'm kind of rusty. I haven't done this in a while, so my pathing's not that great, but you can kind of see the idea here is just like what we were doing before, we don't want to have any jump stitches. We want this whole thing to go as one smooth design. And I actually have a tendency to draw things kind of sketch-like when I do them, so that it kind of looks like things were hand scribbled. Alright, but anyway, now here's where I want to show you a trick. See how close we are from here to here? If we look and use the ruler tool from there to there, it's going to tell us to use a run stitch. So there's not much space between here and here. And guess what I'm going to do? Just jump over there. Nobody will ever even be able to tell. Following the outside edge of our stitch there, and we're just going to ride right inside our other stitch. It's all black, so it's all fine. Bring this along. Now you may say that I'm overlapping this, like the yellow is going to poke out behind there. It might, but it probably will be fine. And when you go to sew it out, if it's not fine, then you can just go back and edit it. Just edit the points. Move the points that make up this fill in a little bit. Now this part, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to hop over and add this detail in without making it a separate segment. It is close enough that it does not need to be a separate segment. Oh, I keep accidentally holding down the control key while I'm changing direction, and you can't do that. Travel back through here, back to where we started, and we continue going down around his body. Notice I've run over myself in several places, more than once. Totally fine with a run stitch. You can get away with a lot of that. What you have to do though is make sure that there's the outline goes over itself at least twice everywhere. So what we're going to do when we're done with this is actually set this to be a double run stitch. This whole running stitch adventure we're doing here is all going to be a double run. I'm just going to take this opportunity to do this foot here. Up and around, and then we're going to shoot up here and then back down so that we get the whole thing. And if you more or less get the idea already, feel free to skip ahead because it's just going to be me tracing outlines for quite a while. And when you're done doing this, what you don't want to do is start editing your lines by what it looks like on the computer, because it's not going to look that way when you sew it out. You really, really, really have to actually sew out your designs before you go in and start edit them. Just the way it is. I have wasted so much time in my life trying to get it to look right on the computer. It doesn't have to look right on the computer. What it looks like on the computer is almost irrelevant. I mean, obviously, it's only to a point that that's true. I mean, if it's if it's really messed up on the computer, that's not a good thing. But the stitch points, especially for a design like this, if you put it in 3D and it looks like there's like the yellow is poking out all over the place, just sew it out so that you can see what it's going to look like. All right, we're gonna have to come back for Finn's fist because we're going back down here, and then we're gonna go up here to meet where I hadn't gotten on him yet, and then back down. I can see that there's gonna be a little bit of a gap right here. Down in here, you see where these stitch points aren't overlapping at all. So hopefully we can get rid of the gap with our run stitch here. I'm gonna purposefully not click in exactly the same places so that it is a little thicker right there. Anyway, now we just move it on over to Finn. It's pretty arbitrary the way I picked, which one we were going to go over there. We'll travel up this way. There's really no, what I would call hard and fast rules for this stuff. Oops, I should just do the rest of his arm. I'll go back up and do that part later. I'm just going to kind of go all around the outside and then back to the inside on my way back. But anyway, there's no like hard and fast rules in how this works. You just kind of do what you wanna. Alright, so here we've got kind of a dilemma. This is too close. This is too far from here to here to just jump over into it. So there's going to be a trim, and I'm going to have that be the last thing. It's going to do his eyes, and then I'm going to jump down from this eye into here and do the rest of the detail on his face. But I will, however, jump to here and do the outline around his face opening on his little hood thing. And I meant to be curving this line as I was doing this by holding the control key. There we go. Back out and up. Up we go. Here we can make this little divot by going down. I did it a little bit exaggerated. You kind of have to do that if you want to be able to actually see it. Trying to stay right on top of the stitch points. Let's see, do I want to go and do the backpack and then come around and do the inside? How do I want to do this? I want to do like this. Here, then here, then here, here, and back down. That's how I'm going to do it. Alright, where was I? Here. So we're going to go around the outside of the backpack, although you know what? I'm going to come down in here first and then back. I should be curving this. I'm so lazy. Okay, and then we're going to travel up this. Hand's starting to fall asleep. All this clicking. Not as young as I used to be back in the heady days of my digitizing youth, when I could left click with abandon. Up we go. So this is putting sorely lacked definition around his arm here, which really we should have drawn this as a separate fill and give it a separate stitch direction. I forget why I didn't feel like doing that last month. Probably would have looked better though. Alright, so let's see. We've gone around the outside of that arm. Where are we now? Here. Let's actually back up to here. And I need to do this part of the backpack's outline. I'm just going to have to come back down. I'm sure there's like a more elegant way to do this. You know, this is honestly, I've never been that great at this, and luckily it's just very forgiving doing this. Like you can get away with, oops, having pretty sloppy looking outlines, and still have it look good. Believe me, I know. So we come around that way. Alright, where are we at? There. And then we're going to come back through here. See, this looks like it hasn't been done yet. Up and back down. Okay. And it looks like we haven't gone across here yet, so we'll do that. And then we're going to travel back up this. Oh, look, we didn't go from there to there, so we're going to go there, down, back up to that part of the sleeve, and then back down the arm until we get to the shirt. And we're going to go and hide down through here. I'm going to go over this one twice because there's a traveling stitch right there. So that ends up being 3 times. If I double run this, that becomes 6 times. That's quite a bit, but in my experience, it looks okay. Especially for cartoony stuff. I mean, you know, it's totally different if you're making some kind of like realistic looking design. But when you're doing cartoons, they ought to have bold outlines. And what you may find is that you've got some areas that are a little too bold. And you just kind of have to go back over yourself a little bit, like add a new run stitch in. Right here, this is another area where we've got an existing traveling stitch, so we're going to go over this a couple of times. This traveling stitch is one that we're covering up by doing this. So I'm going to travel back up here. Okay, then we're going to go down and we're going to do one of his feet. So we're going to actually generate this line once we get down to his shoe, because his shoe is just all black. Okay, and around we go. Just like that. Painted myself into a corner a little bit. I should have stopped this back here. Rather than backspace, I'll just bring it down to here. Okay, so now this is my stop point for this particular run. Right click to generate, and we're going to go ahead and draw in a satin stitch starting here. I'm using the control key to curve this. Oops. Okay, right click, put in some inclinations, just like that. Right click again, start point here, stop point here. Lovely. And now we're going to take our run stitch, pick it right back up where we were. Now the trouble here is it's very difficult to see where I have and haven't traced because I don't have it in 3D. So what you want to do is switch it back and forth between 3D and not 3D. And there we go. I can see that it's this side that needs to be traced more. Okay, so we get up to his pants leg, and we're going to have to put on the 3D again. Okay, that means we got to go all the way up to here. Now, I said we wanted to go over this a whole bunch of times, and that's true. You know what? Let's just do it. We're going to go back this way. Just to cover up that that traveling stitch that we made earlier. Put the 3D back on. Okay, so we don't have this down here, and we didn't have this line here. So we're going to go back up here. Actually, you know what? No, let's save that. We're going to go and do this leg, see if I can path it better this time. All right, so we'll get up there. Did I do? No, we'll get all across here, and then travel down this leg. That was me using the arrow keys, by the way. Okay, I'm going to stop it here. All right, so that's a run. Now we get the satin to do his other shoe. And I should be using the control key. It really does just make nicer looking curves. I used to tell people it didn't make a difference, but you know, the more I played with it, the more I realized that it does. So I don't tell people that anymore. Okay, right click, and there, and there, and there. Right click again. Start here, stop here. Go ahead and stick our 3D on real quick. Okay, we can see that we need to travel from here back up around the circle a little bit, and then around to here. Put the 3D back on. We can see that that's already done. We're just going to travel right inside it and come up the other leg. And this is the spot where I want to make sure I go over myself a couple of times. Again, because we have a traveling stitch there that's not hidden until we put this run stitch down. And let's see where we're at. Put it in 3D. Yeah, so we need this whole little section of arms has to be done. Down here, where the arms cross over, we got to come down and do his fingers. And the part of his arms where it's crossing right there. Back in 3D, see where we're at. Okay, I think we're just about ready here to end our outline. Up and down, and put it in 3D. And yeah, that part's all already done. So I think we can right click to generate, put the whole thing in 3D, and let's back off and take a look. Okay, we've got outlines around most of this. I think all we have left is Jake's face, and then we'll be ready to go. It looks like we're going to have to do something about the outline around Jake here, probably, even though I said, oh, you can't tell what it's going to look like when you sew it out. You know, you got to sew it out. It really looks like some of this. See, it's deceptive, though, because with a satin stitch pulls as it sews. So you want it pulls, meaning this will pull together and be narrower than it shows on the page. So yeah, it's hard to tell. You really just got to sew it out to find out what it's going to do. But anyway, so we're going to go from here into here onto his face, and there wasn't really a good segue to get into his face here, so we're just going to go ahead and draw this like this. We're going to start with his eye, and I'm going to draw that with a complex fill. Guess I should have been using the control key. Oops. Alright, stitch direction we're going to make perpendicular to the stitches because this is going to be overlapped. So we need it not to sink down into it. And what you do, if you're going to overlap fill stitches, they have to be perpendicular to one another. Start point here, stop point here, and we're going to travel from there down for the next section, which is going to be the run stitch here. So we go around his mouth. Around his teeth. and we're going to jump right to there. And then we're going to do the last complex fill. Set the stitch direction, start, stop. That's it. Let's turn off the backdrop. Take a look at what we got. Well, it's definitely Finn and Jake. Anybody that knows the show will be able to tell you that. So here's the areas that I foresee not being totally perfect. Jake's teeth, looks like I need to adjust the fill stitch in there. I would adjust the fill stitch and not the outlines, because, and look, I missed this section of run right here. If I was paying closer attention, I would have got that. But and the fill right here around his paw, Jake's paw, that could be better. I need to adjust these points here. See where his hat does this? Right here? That's not good. Let's go ahead and grab that. That's this line here. Use our shape tool. What we can do is actually grab this point and drag it down, and grab this point and drag it down. I know I just said not to adjust your outline, but there it is. That's better. And I would go in and adjust the fills on his teeth a little bit maybe, but I wouldn't do it until I sew it out and see what really needs to be done. You sew it out, and then you have it sitting next to you, and you look at it and say, okay, this is what needs to be adjusted on this design. You know, you don't want to go and start messing with it now because you'll be here all night and doing stuff you might not need to do. What you want to do is sew it out and then see what needs to be done from there. But at any rate, here's our design. We could watch it sew out and see how it doesn't have any jump stitches for the whole first part of the design. We end up with a few at the end just because there's some things that we can't really get around. But for the majority of the design, it doesn't have jumps. So that's how you digitize from a backdrop, or at least that's how I do it. I hope these two videos have helped some people and you guys like them. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.